Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, the Armor Wizard, Zap Zap, and we have a body armor demo to do today. Now before I get into today's test, I want to take a moment to ask you all when the last time you've talked to your parents or loved ones, because sometimes in a flash they can be gone. So if you haven't done so, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, send them a text message, call them, ask them how the heck they're doing, just so you keep in touch with them, because like I said, you never know when they'll be gone. Anyways, we have a body armor demo today. In full transparency, Soloman sent these body armor panels over for me to destroy with no strings attached. If that's not how you say his name, someone please correct me in the comments below.
Axel Fuller. Axel. Achmal, Achwell, Axel.
This particular panel is a single curve model of theirs. This 10 by 12 panel weighs 6 pounds, 10 ounces, or 3.005 kilograms. It is approximately 1.05 inches thick, or 26.688 millimeters for those across the pond. As I mentioned, it is single curve, meaning that we only have this one rolling curve right here. Generally a lot more comfortable than a flat plate, but multi-curve plates tend to be the most comfortable. Again, sometimes depending on your body type, a single curve can be advantageous. Now, if this is the first time you're coming across my YouTube channel, we do all of our body armor demos, reviews completely different than everyone else on YouTube. While I'm not an NIJ lab, I try to stick to some NIJ constants out here so you guys can take some solid data away from this. So if you're looking at making a purchase of this plate, you have confidence in them. Since this is a level 4 rifle armor, we shoot at 45 feet. We also shoot at 0 degrees because that represents worst case scenario. If there's anything you can take away from my demos, I'm after worst case. In an NIJ lab for level 4, they're going to shoot one single round of M2 AP center of mass at that plate, and they're going to get a fresh plate and continue to test. Seeing how we only have 3 of these, 2 of them that I want to test with and 1 as a backup, we have to place as many hits on our plate as possible, again, for a worst case scenario. Since this employs a ceramic strike face per the NIJ, we've gone ahead and dropped it on its face 2 times as a preconditioning test. You'll note down here on each plate that I mark it with a DT to indicate that I've done the drop test, and then I also do a torque test. That's where you take the opposing edges of the plates and you apply force to listen for any cracking. Because of this Line-X polyurea coating on the outside, sometimes it's hard to hear any cracking, so I've marked each plate with a TQ, meaning that it has passed our torque test. One thing manufacturers are not good at disclosing at times is how much of the strike face of their ceramic plates are edge to edge, meaning that for this 10 by 12 plate, the ceramic would have to extend all the way out to the outer perimeter. So that's why you see this green line here, indicating that the ceramic goes to around that green line, give or take, and there's usually some kind of foam buffer on the outside of the edge to make up the difference. Now this allows for a lighter plate. Like I said, this is 6 pounds, 10 ounces, but you don't have a ballistic rated piece of ceramic out here. Again, per the NIJ, they're going to shoot center of mass here, so they won't shoot any closer than 2 or 3 inches from the edge. So it's kind of one of those gray areas where, again, if you're making a buying decision and wanting to research all this stuff, you should know from the manufacturer disclosing that this doesn't have a ceramic strike face that extends the edge to edge, and if that's not something you want, you probably shouldn't buy it. We also use a chronograph, a Pro Chronopal Digital DLX, because we need to know the velocity of those rounds as they strike those plates. It is certainly possible to download or upload or use the completely wrong projectile when doing these demos, and we don't want to give anybody a false sense of security with these. Again, we're after worst case scenario. We also use a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma Plastilina #1 clay that acts as our compressible media so that we can have a giant box to put the armor up against. Now, I have been heating the clay all day in a little igloo, but the second I take it out of there and it's only 50 degrees outside today, the clay starts to get cold. You have to certify that clay at 100 degrees, and you drop a giant ball on it in the lab, and we're not going to do that out here. So we're just looking at a general representation of what backface could be. If you see me stop M2AP in a plate, but the dimple is like 70 millimeters, in actual NIJ testing, that would be failing. And finally, we put a spreadsheet here at the beginning and the end where we list all the threats, and we fill them out at the end, marker velocities and penetrations, and we even do a teardown so we can confirm what the inside of our plate is going to look like, and then we send you on your merry way. I do want to remind everyone that I am not an NIJ lab, so if you see a threat penetrate or stopped over here, you should always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited lab results. And on the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop M993 going 2,500 feet per second, you should send that off to an accredited lab and have that added as a special rifle threat to your panel. I always go back and forth at times debating on what threats I should shoot at some of these plates, and for the most part, it's pretty much random until I get here and I look at my box of ammo and pull stuff out. But usually for level 4, we're going to start off with the actual NIJ threat, which is M2 armor piercing. The spec for that is 2880 feet per second. You won't see that out of an M1 Garand or a 1903. You might need a 26-inch bolt action to get that. Again, that's kind of as a worst case scenario. The surplus stuff's going to be anywhere from 2,500 to maybe 2,750 feet per second, depending on the gun and the age of the surplus. So we've got a 300 Winchester Magnum that we've loaded these to spec. Now, this last summer here, most of them were 30 to 40 feet per second over the max variance. It's colder outside, so we should be pretty close. I'm going to take 3 hits of that at our standard pressure, and then our nickel case there is our plus P+, so we should see over 3,200 feet per second from that. We'll take the 3 shots of standard pressure first. I'll go down and check the plate, and with a little bit of foreshadowing, if I take the hit, that's a good thing. If I move on to something else, then you know that's a bad thing. This does appear to be a tile array plate. I'm not sure if they're hexagon or rectangle tiles. Usually, sometimes there are a monolithic, so a single piece of ceramic that makes up a strike face. Other times we use tiles to make up that strike face, and that's generally how you end up with plates that don't have edge-to-edge ceramic. I've been talking a lot. Let's shut up and shoot. So this one's going to be center of mass. So that was 11 feet per second over the max variance. And then that one was within spec. So far, it looks like this plate's doing pretty darn well. Shot number 1, 2, and then 3. That was a little close, that shot. Then our plus P+ shot was down there. It doesn't look like we're using any drop face foam on this. We are using our little hex or rectangle tiles there. You can see that foam. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. We do have some dimpling. Like I said, our clay is warm. This shot up here is a good representation. 36 millimeters. Our plus P+ shot is way in there. 42 millimeters plus a little bit more because it dented inside the clay. This shot in the middle, right around 16 millimeters. Fairly impressive for a tile array plate. I would like to see them add some drop face foam on there. We'll have to tear this down. Maybe they're using a good high density, ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, or I should say a high quality one, that's been pressed very nicely and it's gonna stay together. I think we'll finish this plate out with some 5.56 threats and move on to number 2. I think you all would agree that our plate is compromised, so we're gonna finish it off with some 5.56 threats. We have 3 flavors that are very common that are good against barriers, particularly body armor of certain types. We have M193, that's our 55 grain full metal jacket, good against steel at close range. We have M855, that is a 62 grain full metal jacket with a little conical steel penetrating tip. That is good against pure 100% polyethylene plates and some ceramic types. Then we have M855A1, the evolution of M855. It has a copper core and a large, hard arrowhead steel penetrating tip, known for being Mr. Spicy Boy and popping steel, polyethylene, and even ceramic plates, unless they're rated for it. Very, very capable round. We have a 22-inch TC compass here. I think there's not a lot of this plate left. Now the A1, it's going to be extremely hard to see where the hits are on this plate because it is falling apart. This is always a constructive criticism I have with almost everyone's plates, is we need a better way of laminating our strike face. And what I've seen done is wrapping it in Kevlar or a fiberglass and then a resin of some kind. And that just keeps everything together longer, because as you can see, after we were taking each one of those shots, more and more of the ceramic just kept falling out. The M193 was up here, then the M855, then the A1 was down here. Place those bets in the comments below. I can get the straps off. Hey, no pass-throughs, folks. We will do a tear down at the end to confirm, but I don't see any holes in our plate in the back. But pretty much all the ceramic has gone bye-bye. And like I said, here is that high-density foam that a lot of manufacturers use on the outside of the edge. This in of itself is not ballistic rated for any of the threats. Now on the back side here, you see there is polyethylene, and that could stop M193, but M855 or A1 or any armor-piercing threats, it would not stop. They're using alumina, which is our white ceramic. Cool. Based on plate number 1, I have a feeling it will stop these threats. And without going to our tungsten core M993, there's probably not a lot of steel core threats that will stop this particular design, mainly because alumina is pretty tough and usually those tiles end up being pretty thick. But we've got 2 of our 300 wind chad loads here. We've got our M80A1, that is the U.S. Army's current issue ball round in 7.62 NATO, but I have it loaded in 300 Winchester Magnum. Then I have M14A1 API, Mr. Flashy Flash, very cool round, got lots of incendiary compound in there and a hardened steel penetrator. The plate's on fire down there. Then the M80A1, I'll place to the direct right of that.
So much fire, so satisfying.
I think at this point, let's have some fun. I've got 3 more rounds of our M14A1 API. Whatever material that Soloman is using in that plate, that API is catching it on fire. I saw a blue flame come out of that. Wish I remembered the phone. We have 2 more 30 caliber threats, and I think we're done after that because the sun is setting. First one is our P80 black tip 50s 60s armor piercing round that was standardized in 308, 150 grains, has a pretty sharp little penetrating core in it. Then we've got an 150 grain API round. This was in 7.62 by 5.4R. I resized it to 308. These came from Denver Bullets. I might have shot that way too low. Nice. This particular design seems to be holding up a little better than plate number 1. I detect what looks like maybe some aramid fiber on the outside. I would hope both these plates were the same. But this thing took a lot of API shots. Right there, 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 and there. Then our M80A1 was right there. Our SBR API was down there. Then the M61 P80 black tip was right there. I think that might be in a compromised area. Place those bets in the comments below. Uh-oh, R.A.N.G.E. We have a couple penetrations here. Likely from that P80 black tip. We'll peel all this off and confirm in a minute. But it looks like we stopped. Oh, that API shot came through. Otherwise, fairly impressive. This polyethylene that they're using seems to be holding together rather well. It's just our strike face, on the other hand, is not. Paging Dr. Matt to surgery. Paging Dr. Matt to surgery. Now for a fan favorite, the teardown. That's where we rip apart these plates to the best of our ability to see what the inside looks like. This is plate number 1, confirmed. There are no penetrations on that plate whatsoever. I like this polyethylene that they are using. Look at how well it remains pressed even after taking that many hits of M2 armor piercing. I measured it right around 532 thousandths thick. You can see the adhesives on there that they're using. Again, I think they could be using better adhesives. As I mentioned, we are using our alumina tiles right around 416 thousandths, at least the one that I grabbed. There is the foam on the edge there. And that's pretty much plate number 1. Now this is a little interesting. I don't know if somebody forgot to do something, and that's why plate number 2 looks a little different. We'll get there in a second. Confirmed our penetrations were that SBR API, the P80 black tip, likely because we were in a compromised area, and then that other shot of our M14A1 API. Again, all that muzzle energy on this polyethylene, and it's still very, very solid. I must commend them that this polyethylene is of pretty good quality. You can see the penetrating cores in there, right there. That API one somehow smoked its way through. We've tested that in the past against an aluminum plate and it penetrated, but against like silicon carbide or boron carbide, it gets stopped. And you can see the first 2 rounds that we shot at this plate didn't even make it into the polyethylene, but then because we start delaminating the strike face and putting energy on it, that's when the rounds start getting a little deeper in there. Now, as I mentioned, this is plate number 2. We've got a somewhat laminating layer of maybe a few layers of Kevlar on the front here. This plate stayed together a lot better than number 1. I'm not sure if somebody forgot a manufacturing step or if Soloman sent me 2 different designs or variations and he didn't denote that. You can see our non-ballistic edge here goes all the way out there. Otherwise, man, this thing did rather well. Only downside is its single curve, and I would say it could use some better laminating on the strike face. Well, if anything, I think the polyethylene in our Soloman plate is a very good polyethylene, at least in my testing. Normally, with some of our plates that we've tested in the past, depending on how well our polyethylene is pressed and what type of quality it is, because I think there's different levels of it. After some shots with a lot of muzzle energy, we start to delaminate those layers and or deform our backer. And just like with our Hanlon Tactical Studios plate, this polyethylene backer seemed to hold up very well. I mean, this thing is still fairly rigid and I cannot thumb through the different layers like I can, again, in some of our prior testing. We were able to contain multiple hits of our 30 cal armor piercing threats, even our 300 Wind Chad plus P plus M2AP. It seems to be that little SBR API load that was originally in 762x54R. That little protected penetrator does very well against our alumina strike face. Now, we are recording the closing a little while after the evaluation of our plate because I wanted to reach out to Soloman to ask them why plate number 2 had that laminating layer or the aramid fiber in front of our strike face. And essentially Soloman said production has switched over to adding that laminating layer, and the one without it was the old one. And you can see plainly from this video that that is doing a very good job at keeping our plate together as long as possible. The first one seemed to jettison all of our ceramic tiles pretty easily shot after shot. Again, constructive criticism. We need to find a way to better adhere that strike face to that backer. Otherwise, I think this was a very good plate. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into them. You'll note that I've added a counter for 2023 and onward for a total value of armor destroyed across the channel, and that number just keeps going up and up. Sometimes I'm able to get these panels for free from the manufacturer. Other times I have to buy them at full retail or a discount. So there's a lot to be thankful for here. Number one is my Patreon, Subscribe Star, and YouTube channel members. I have those available as a way to support me. I also have a link tree in the description below, various different discount codes and affiliate tracking links that essentially earn me a sales commission. They cost you nothing. If I ever forget to mention that there is an affiliate link, always ask me and I will clarify that, because I want to be 100% transparent. Number two is the fine gentleman over at Soloman, again in full transparency, sent me those level 4 plates to destroy with no strings attached. And of course, number 3 is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.